Hey guys, welcome to a very special edition of the Detour Live. It sort of freaks me out that the guy who narrates the intro is here live in the studio, joined by the legend himself, the voice of cycling, Phil Liggett. Phil, welcome to the Detour, mate.
It's lovely to be back. It's a long way from the Tour de France, but now we're on the Tour of Italy, I guess.
Well, what we want to do is quickly recap what happened overnight in the Giro, but we want to really dissect because we've been fortunate enough to have a quick sneak peek at this documentary that's been made on your life, and it is, well, the reviews are in, mate, and it is bloody brilliant. It is such a good film, so we're going to have plenty to talk about. But before we deep dive into all of that, Johnny, massive stage overnight at the Giro, and your man, you finally got a prediction right. Peter Sagan gets the chocolates.
Two winners in 3 days, but we won't go down that path. But yeah, look, it wasn't just a win. I mean, sure, you watched it as well, Phil. It was one for the ages. I mean, we're talking about everyone writing him off, hadn't won a race since Tour de France last year. And for someone who is just a triple world champion, hundreds of wins, that was an amazing drought. But his form was never that bad. And as you know, I picked him about 3 times so far in this Giro. And I picked him last night because it was a real, as I said, a Michael Matthews or a Peter Sagan type stage. But unfortunately, Michael Matthews is out. But Sagan, he just was right from the get-go. He was on, and it was a great stage. They never let the break get too far. The race for the GC was fantastic. It's one of those really good stages. And the last part of it was really lumpy. Up the last climb, he just rode away from what was left of the breakaway, and he was just too good. And they were chasing hard, but it was just Sagan at his best. He just stuck it up everyone and relit the battle for the points jersey, because that was, everyone thought Demar had that in the bag. Well, now he's winning both the intermediate sprints and the stage, and was reduced. He's only 20 or 22 points behind Demar now. I mean, tomorrow's maybe a Demar stage, but he's thrown this wide open. So just one of those great days. And I felt for Fuglsang, who in the final descent had a mechanical, and it's cost him a minute, and he was looking one of the real red-hot favourites for this bike race.
Yeah.
Phil, it just shows you can't keep a legend down, can you?
No, and he's been trying very hard even throughout his ride in the Tour. I mean, I kept getting these letters telling me to stop talking about Peter Sagan. He's a has-been, and why do you keep building him up when he lets you down at the end of the day? But the fact was, he's always something to talk about. He's always in the frame. That was a very unusual way for Peter to win, to ride away and go for it. It was a big gamble, but his legs were clearly there. And as he said, I'm a showman. And he turned on the style. So I was very happy. I think it's about 14, 15 months since he last won a bike race, which I find incredible. Okay, we've lost half the season with COVID, etc. But I'm glad Peter's back, because that man is a big value to the peloton just now. And he's it's his first Tour of Italy. And I don't think many people have realised he's never ridden the Giro.
Unbelievable.
And he goes on straight away in the opening 10 days. So great for Peter. I'm delighted for him.
Well, here was Peter Sagan's reaction after the finish on stage 10.
Yeah, I'm very happy, what I can say, finally, because I'm trying since when we started again the season with the Strade Bianche, Milan-San Tour de France. I was a lot of time on the podium in the first top 5, but the victory was, I had the last victory last year in Tour de France. It's already a long time ago, and finally arrived. I'm very happy for that.
He's such a legend. He's so relaxed, isn't he?
He's a super guy. I remember at the Tour Down Under, and when he won the World Championship 3 years in a row. Well, I had a guy from South Africa send me the original 3 World Championship jerseys and asked me if I'd asked Peter Sagan to get them signed. Well, I didn't know him that well, but he walked in the press room and I said, "Hey, Peter, would you like to sign these jerseys for me?" And he looked at them and he knew straight away they were original World Championship jerseys. I said, "They're for a friend who's a great fan." He said, "Sure." And he put big names right across all 3 jerseys. And He's a nice guy. I like Peter. I'm glad he's had success because he works hard. Yes, he's talented, like bike riders at this level are. But if you don't apply and take the risk, you'll never win. And he did it in a way nobody expected on his own. So that's all.
You know, the thing that really summed him up to me, and I'm a big fan as well, was at the Tour Down Under about a year ago, when he was going out in the car and he saw these guys having trouble with a barricade, something was stuck. He jumped out and helped the barricade guys untangle this mess.
Yeah.
Now that was just, I don't know another bike rider that's ever done that, but for Peter Sagan to get out and do that, I thought, wow, that is something special.
It was hilarious. We captured that film on NBC, and Paul Sherry and I commentated on it. We were full of admiration. I thought he wasn't very good in his action for picking the barriers up, but he could throw them very well.
Well, does that recap the Giro? Can we move on to the doco now, Iffy?
I think we can. I think we can. I think we should. No, I got to say, I was very fortunate that Phil sent me a copy to look at. So don't send to anyone. Well, I cheated. I sent it to you, Dan.
Yes, but I understand making films that you're not meant to pass these links on. So I've respected that and watched it just myself. Unlike John.
But I got it is absolutely amazing. I've been lucky enough to be a friend of Phil's for almost too long to remember, but and a long time, and maybe longer, as they say in the classics. But it is. You've always been just this natural one guy who just very easygoing, laconic, and this movie absolutely captures a lot of that, and it captures a lot of your story, you and Trisha's story, and all of the other things in between. And I'll tell you what, when it comes out to the movies, people, you have to go and see this. It is something special. So Dan, why don't you throw to the little preview?
Yeah, we've got the trailer. Let's watch the trailer, and then we're just going to absolutely pick your brain for the next 45 minutes, Phil.
This is going to be a very strange season for me this year, isn't it? I'm going to go to the commentary box without Paul for the first time since 1986. The fans are going to be looking at it very critically. Oh, he's not the same now that Paul's left his side. It won't be the same.
Well, alongside me now is Paul Sherwin, and he'll be joining me for the full 3 weeks as my co-commentator for the first time.
You may not recognize his face, but if you've ever watched the Tour de France, you know his distinctive and famous voice.
On the right, here comes Hondo.
He's a walking, talking part of broadcast history.
Well, you're known as the voice of the Tour de France, the voice of cycling.
The legend, Phil Liggett.
Is there any stopping Lance Armstrong in this Tour de France? And the answer is no, there is not.
Phil's never really had a chance to tell his side of that story.
Well, Paul is already a British champion. He's 3 days old. Congratulations, Paul.
And so it was the end of the dream.
I really, really feel for Phil Liggett right now.
How much longer will Phil Liggett continue? He's 75.
I don't think Phil will ever be Phil without Paul.
He can see the banner now. The moment is going to turn to a smile. He cannot believe it. He promised the Italians he'd do it. We're looking at the Battle of Val Thorens here. It has never been like this before on the Tour de France.
We didn't come here to believe that's what we were going to do, save rhinos. We came here because we wanted to live here where rhinos lived. But we've been drawn in now.
Cycling has always been Phil's life. It's an impossible thing to intrude into.
I was still training. Trish drove the car every day from one hotel to the other, and I rode the bike to the West Mountains. And I was too tired to do anything else at night, so we got on very well.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Good night to be. We love him.
So melodious.
A global legend for cycling.
Just the dulcet tones.
The sound of familiarity.
It's worth just watching every bike race just to feel.
Phil will have a different show now without Paul.
The tour goes on.
So that's the trailer for The Voice of Cycling. As we said, it's unbelievable. But before we get into it, Phil, we've got another special guest, another legend of cycling. Gerry Ryan joins the show. Gerry, welcome to the Detour, mate.
Good morning, Phil. Good evening.
Hey, hi, Gerry. How are you?
So you don't use the legend. You lose the legend. Very easy.
Hey, out the paddock. He's running past the window right now. I can see him over your shoulder.
Sorry.
Hello.
Oh, here's Patricia.
Trish, how are you, darling?
Good, thank you. I'm going away now. Finishing a Zoom class. Bye.
Now, Gerry, you and Phil go way back. When was the first time you met Phil Liggett?
I'd like to hear the answer to this, Gerry, because I can't remember.
Well, it goes back to a Bay Classic. Johnny, you might be able to fill me in on that, mate. So what year was that?
Is that you, Gerry? You look a bit like the old man from the sea there, mate. You haven't seen a razor for a little while, pal.
Well, mate, I can't build caravans. We're not allowed to. So what I'm doing is trying to get a job at Santa Claus for Christmas. So, Johnny, ho, 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 send me a letter where you live and I'll drop off by your house.
All right, mate. I have a chimney. Yeah. Yeah, you might even fit through it. Actually, I couldn't in the old days, but I can now. I reckon it would have been probably late 90s. I reckon. Of course, you did the tour of Tassie with me in around 99, 98. Yeah, and so I could have been around about 95, 96. You did the Bay Crits the first time, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
all I know, well, not younger, but back then.
And Gerry, one of the things that is obviously coming out in this Phil about this documentary about Phil's life is we all know he's the voice of cycling, but it shows how much passion the man has for not just the sport but people. You would have seen firsthand the effect that Phil's had on crowds and how he mixes with people behind the scenes. He's really one in a generation type of character in the sport.
He is, and we've been various places, and I always like walking beside Phil because everyone gets to look not at me, but they glance that way. And Phil always gives the time of day to everyone in the street, and he's just loved by so many because Phil is Phil, and just is very humble and still has time for people. So it's just. I've been so fortunate to spend some quality time away from cycling, having a little bit of fun, and we hope to see you again this year and next year in January, Phil, and take off where we left off in terms of enjoying some nice Mitchelton wines and enjoying the stories.
Well,
sorry, mate.
I'm very surprised to see, Gerry, that John's got 2 bottles of Mitchelton wine behind him there, and there's still 4. So there's a problem here.
Well, and that's why I'm having a cup of tea, because John didn't deliver the wine.
And Phil, you've been lucky to spend a bit of time up at Ngambie and do some bird watching, and you had a pretty special night with some sugar gliders, I heard.
No, I got to set that story up. Actually, you're very right, Dan.
Why do you let Phil tell it, John?
I'm going to let Phil, but first of all, I'm going to just set it up because it was a wonderful, amazing story. So we were lucky enough to have a few New Year's Eves together with Gerry and Val and Kay and myself and Phil and Trish, and we had this year it was at his house at Limerick Lane up at Ngambie, and it was it was New Year's Eve, but it was like 40 degrees in the water bag. It was really hot, and Gerry said, "Look, I don't think we'll go out. What we'll do, we'll send out for supplies. We sent out for some Thai takeaway, one little Thai shop in Ngambie, and we were sitting around the pool. But as it got dark, Gerry turns. He had those lights in the trees around there, like little fairy lights. It's a bit like Disneyland when the lights come on. But that attracted the sugar glider. And then, Phil, it started flying between us, and it was amazing. So, Phil, you could take over from there, bud.
Well, I remember we were sat on the edge of the, I don't know, I suppose it's a pool. I don't know, it's a lake or what it is.
Yeah, swimming pool.
We had our trousers rolled up. We sat on the edge of our feet in the water, a glass of good red wine, and it was a perfect evening. And it's stuck in our minds ever since. We were all together, 6 of us, and I suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, because as you're right, Gerry has all the trees around the lake floodlit. It's like a brackish piece of water with all the dead trees forming skeletal appearances in the moonlight. And then I saw this thing start to jump from the trees. They're called sugar gliders. I'd never seen one in my life, and I've never seen one since, only this particular night. And they don't actually fly, they do glide. They can only go down, they can't go up. So they have to climb the tree like a squirrel, and then they float off it, and they always lose height each time they move around the lake. And the thing did a lap of the whole lake, coming past us and everything. And it was stunning. I remember Gerry remarking on it, because I think Val said she'd never seen one since either. And great memories. That's what life is all about. That is what we are part of, and that's why I love being involved with sport, to meet with great people.
And Phil, I could correct you. There's 5 of us sitting on the edge of the pool. There was 1 person in the pool. Who would that be?
Oh, that'd be true. Yeah.
I was a little bit larger in those days.
Gerry, another thing that comes out in the film is Phil's incredible passion for wildlife, and particularly the fight to save the rhinos. That's obviously a pretty impressive thing that they're doing, which came out in the film.
It is, and Phil got me involved with the Monarto rules.
Don't be angry, Gerry. Don't be angry.
No. It's a wonderful, wonderful project, and so I'm involved and part of it. But Phil's influence and the amount of money he has raised here, 2 things: awareness and also money. So no, he's a great ambassador for the Rhino Project.
Phil, where was that born from, the passion, particularly for South Africa?
Well, South Africa started simply by being invited by African television back in 1989 to go over and commentate on what they said was the biggest participation cycle race in the world. I said, what's it called? They said, it's the Argus Cycle Tour. So I've never heard of it. They said, well, we're told you understand cycling, so would you come and commentate on it for us? We have 12,000 cyclists. I said, well, there may be a big offer, because, of course, apartheid was still going strong. And as a white person, I couldn't go, because they just suspended Mike Gatting, the English cricketer, for life, because he got blacked by going to play cricket in South Africa. So I said, I can't come, I'm a journalist. So the following year, fortunately, apartheid was ending. And so I got the chance, and I went. The fee wasn't the same now, because they didn't have to pay so much money to get me. And I remember stepping off the plane in Cape Town, looking at the mountain and saying, this is the most beautiful city I've ever seen in my life. Why have I never been here? Well, we know why. So for 10 years or more, I bought a house eventually in the Cape, and I made a lot of friends. And there's a wedding breakfast one morning to the guy that was looking after me there, he was a lawyer. And I was at his brother's wedding, and a beautiful setting in the wineries of Cape Town. And I said, Lawrence, I said, if you ever hear of a piece of land in the north, which is the wild part of South Africa, by the Kruger Park, that I can give to the animals, and it's their little piece of land, let me know. And goodness me, within 3 weeks, he was acting in a high-profile divorce case for a very famous sculptor and his wife, who she was insisting they sold half of their land in the north, 20 acres. And I bought it. And but at the same token, the 2 did get divorced, but they're still friends, and I still see them both. And they've been to London and everything. But I bought the land, and I never fenced it. And then working with the local people, the rangers and everybody, all the fences are now down for 55,000 hectares of land. It is free to roam everywhere. And we have all the animals. Now, the people that live there tend to put a little fence around their property just where they live, so the lions don't come in the bedroom at night. I'm afraid, Trish, we're not into that. We're not into that. So they're looking through the window. And when the lion roars on the deck at 3 a.m, I say to Trish, don't ask me to go out and chew it away. I just say it walks off. And I've jumped out my skin one night when a lion really did roar. He must have been standing outside the bedroom window, and the roar was horrendous. But I didn't open the window or the door to check on him. He was gone next month.
Now,
So that's it. And then we got drawn in. We bought a holiday home to be with the animals and the birds. And we suddenly found ourselves in a war zone because the poachers, from 12,500 rhinos 12, 15 years ago, we're down to our last 3.5. And that's when things had to be done. And as the film portrays, we started taking the horns off the rhinos and costing the equivalent of, let me just think, $1,200 per rhino to have the job done. That's a lot of money in South Africa. So we had to start getting the money to pay for the dehorning of the rhinos. We've done over 100 now. And until 2 days ago, quite literally, we had not lost a single rhino for more than a year. That's a first in 2 decades.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Yeah, brilliant, mate. Brilliant.
Now, before we let you go, Gerry, you organised a special night for Phil early in the year. Now, I've got to say, I felt like I was thrown under the bus a bit because I was told it was a roast. Now, I get up there and I start laying the boots in and making some jokes saying, oh, Phil, he didn't shout around and all this sort of stuff. And then when I got off, people were going, geez, mate, you're a bit harsh. And all these people were talking, they were all tributes and stuff. Was it a roast or was it a toast? Did I get the R and the T's mixed up?
You're the only one who could read. It was a roast, right? On the table and a roast to Phil.
Oh, right.
The people didn't want to see him roasted. They wanted to see him toasted, and that was the fact, wasn't it?
The problem is there's no real dirt on Phil. He's too nice.
Well, anyway, Trisha's just walked in, so keep it down, man.
Talk about me.
We were
well,
talking about me. Nothing.
Oh, is he always talking about you?
But it was a special night anyway, Gerry.
It was a great night. I'm totally surprised. For about 3 weeks, Gerry, people kept coming up and saying, I'll see you on Monday. I thought, what are they talking about?
Oh, I remember that.
I thought this was a nice, quiet little function. Are we just going to say goodbye to it? It was on the evening returning back to London. And then I had people like Matt Keenan and then Scott McGrory and all these people saying, we'll see you Monday, looking forward to it. What the hell's going on? It was a lovely night.
Obviously, they can't keep a secret. So we'll remember that next time for a surprise party. But stay safe and healthy, and we look forward to hopefully early in 2021 catching up again and sharing some stories.
I hope so, Gerry. Otherwise,
now, Gerry, Dan was giving you the hurry up there, but you don't have to. You're welcome to stay on for the whole program, mate, and join the fun. You don't have to go.
I'll sit around and listen.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, you stay on board. Yeah, because we've got Matty Keenan popping in shortly, and Scotty. They both want to say a little part about their.
No, well, actually, Don, this is good timing. You can plug. You can do your best work now. It's time to plug Michelin Wines. Get your script ready. You're actually getting better at this. Let's go for it before Matty Keenan joins the show.
All right,
go, John. Pressure. There's a lot of pressure.
There it is. Experience the history, the beauty, and the serenity of the Goulburn Valley. The beautiful Mitchelton Winery, Mitchelton Hotel. As you can see in that beautiful photo, that is the new Mitchelton Hotel. And you've got excellent views on both sides, which catch the river and the surrounding series. And see up there in that beautiful tower, you climb up there, and it's just a sensational view of the whole area. You can go into the Muse restaurant and explore the seasonal menu with wines perfectly paired. You go to Salador, you can book a wine tasting for the beautiful Mitchelton wines. My favourite, the Heathcote Shiraz, is in there. And I fell in love, Gerry, recently when I was up there with the sparkling Shiraz. It's absolutely beautiful. So go that a nudge. And of course, there's the day spa where you can quiet the mind, unwind the body, rediscover your balance in a setting of peace and harmony. So get up when the lockdown gets unlocked, and the rest of Victoria, head up there now to the beautiful Mitchelton Winery, just out of Nagambie on the banks of the glorious Goulburn River.
Well done, John, but can I correct you? I've never seen you climb up the tower. You normally take the lift.
Oh, he's got you there.
Very true. Very true. Very true.
All right, we're going to have a quick word from our mates at Bike Exchange. And then when we come back, we've got Matt Keenan joining the panel.
Look at this bike. You think it's just a bike, right? But it's not. It's a bike 374 people are looking at. This guy, this girl, them, all looking at it. People from here, there, and wherever this is. People that are looking for a bike. Or just a piece of it. Amateurs, semi-amateurs, and pro-amateurs. This guy wants this bike, but with this crank and these bars. This could be the perfect match. But not this one. This girl has a bike to sell, and thousands of people might purchase it. Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. His, hers, yours, and the latest data and insights help those businesses keep moving. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, with over 500,000 products and 900 brands, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
Sensational ad there from Bike Exchange. We're joined now by Matty Keenan. Matty, welcome to the show. It's a bit of a tribute to the great Phil Liggett on the back of his film that's coming out at the Adelaide Film Festival, The Voice of Cycling. Tell me about the early days when you first met Phil.
I was through John Trevorrow, essentially. It was courtesy of the Bay Cycling Classic. It was sponsored by Skilled Engineering then, for memory. And it was an opportunity for me to try and get started in cycling. And it was as a result of, wanting to go to a bike race, commentating on the Bay Crits. And I started doing the B grade race, the support race. And I did that for the first year. And Phil was doing the elite women's race and the elite men's race. The second year I came back again, I did the support race. I thought I was just going to be doing the support race along with Rob Gaylard. May he rest in peace, the great Rob Gaylard. And then Phil invited me up onto the stage to commentate with him. And as a guy who, like most of us, has grown up listening to Phil and often went out bike riding with Phil actually in my voice commentating me, went up to King Lake, my local climb, in my imaginary ride to the top. And then to get the chance to commentate with him, it was an absolute privilege. And then I was lucky enough from that point on to develop a relationship with one of the greatest broadcasters of all time.
Phil, they talk in the film about mentors, and you had a really good mentor in the early days, David Saunders, and you talk about that relationship. Do you never forget the importance of mentors, particularly when a young Matt Keenan wanted to commentate on the stage that day?
No, I've got to say that with Matt, he's been ever so grateful. He's never stopped reminding me I've given him a kick into the world of television. And I'm very appreciative. No, seriously, I'm very appreciative of what Matt has always remembered. And I did the same in my time too. Everybody needs a break in life. And mine came when I met David Saunders. I was actually the organizer of the Tour of Britain Milk Race, and David was the speaker of the tour. And that's how we met. He was already there before me. And we clicked. We became friends. We were both journalists growing up. David was only in his late 30s at the time. But in 1978, after inviting me onto my first Tour de France in 1973 as his driver, and he said, I can't pay you, but I'll cover the hotel. I said, I'm in. Just let me get there. And I did 5 very happy years with David. And David was, without doubt, my mentor. He was an icon. As Peter Matthews, the former British champion, says in the film, well, maybe he doesn't, but he said it to me. He said something like, think about whenever David Saunders commentated, we knew we were in a big bike race because David only did big bike races. And Pete never rode the Tour de France, by the way. But sadly, we came back from the Paris-Nice race in 78 in March. I passed David the vehicle I brought back from Nice for him to drive home and return to Honda. And he was killed on the way home. And I got home. By the time I got home, his wife was on the answer phone saying, Phil, please sit down. David is dead. And I just stared at the phone. I didn't know what to say. I called Maggie, obviously. And then BBC Radio called me immediately and said, look, would I do an obituary on David Saunders on what was then the hot news spot at 7:15 at night? 2 days later, ITV called me and said, if you want the job, we know you can do it. We're not advertising it. I started my life in television. And I thought it was pretty rough on the first commentary, but it got better. But
Phil, how much of a presence did he still have in your mind, even after he'd passed away, in terms of his influence and what you'd learnt from him, and that reminder that you went back to of the things that he'd taught you?
Well, I sat by him all the time. He never gave me any instructions because I wasn't looking for his job. I really was his driver. I sat by him and watched him. He didn't see the moves on television, because he was never a cyclist. He was in the Grenadier Guards. He was a guardsman, and he was a very upright guy, a very good-looking guy. And he ran off with the nurse on the milk race and married her. And to this day, we keep in touch with Maggie, who lives in Scotland now. She's going to love this film. I sent it to her, and I've only just now. So I've warned her. David's got a high profile in the film, and yeah, you always learn, and David was always willing to tell me. We were friends together. We did. It's like the pre-Paul showing, really. Me and David Saunders. And Saunders' new show in because he called him in his early tours, etc. And he died.
Gerry, I want to ask you, how important are mentors, not just for professional, but just in everyday life?
I think it's very important. You've got your family, but sometimes they're a bit too close. And I've got a couple, and I'm very fortunate that they've had a huge influence on me. One of the regrets in my life, early days, I didn't get involved in they call it networking today. And I encourage everyone to get into a network or have a couple of mentors that can help them, either in business or in personal life.
Gerry, do you think sometimes the best mentors are the ones that actually evolve naturally, and maybe the mentor doesn't know? I'm not sure Phil is aware of what sort of a mentoring role he's played with me and how much time I spent observing him, sitting on that stage at the Bakerits in Geelong and watching how he operated, sitting next to him and Paul at the tour and watching how they operate. Sometimes it's the ones that happen organically that can be the most effective.
Go, Val.
Matty.
Hello, Val.
Bring Patricia back. But you're spot on. The two people that I refer to don't realise it, and they're mentors. But I certainly know what a large influence they've had on my life. So,
Keenan, what were some of the things that you picked up on Phil in the early days that helped you?
Preparation. And by the time that I got the opportunity to commentate with Phil, that was I think it was 2004 that I first got the chance to commentate with Phil. So he was already the established voice of cycling by that point, well and truly. What was it, Phil's 73 that you first went to the Tour de France, or 72? So he was already, the broadcaster of cycling, one of the greatest broadcasters in sport. And we're at the Bay Cycling Classic. And Phil, you mentioned before about when Dave Saunders, if he commentated on a bike race, he knew it was a big bike race. You're that voice. So we're turning up to this bike race, and in my mind, this is the voice of cycling. This is Phil Liggett, the guy that calls the Tour de France. He's commentating on the Bakerits. Okay, he's just going to pick up the mic and start talking. Notes are there. He's got listed for the intermediate sprints, who's going to win the intermediate sprints, the running tally on who's leading the points classification for the overall, who's leading the points for the green jersey. That same attention to detail was paid at the Bakerits as what you see Phil pay at the tour for his notes. And how that influenced me was when I got the first opportunity to go to the tour, I was overawed by the experience initially in 2007. And then I cast back my mind to when I saw Phil at the Bakerits. And the thing that he was doing at the Bakerits was the same thing that he was doing at the tour. So to try and get over my nerves, I put myself in my little bubble. And this bike race that I was commentating on, the format is the same as every other bike race that I've commentated on. Prepare in the same way and relax and be yourself and call it like a bike race. And that just came from nothing that Phil said. That was through observation and getting that privilege of being close to him.
One of the things also popped out, Phil, was your early advice was just to be yourself. Don't try and be anyone else. How crucial was that advice early on?
That was absolutely crucial. famous guy, and he's in the film, a picture of him anyway, Dickie Davis, who's a famous frontman, anchorman for sport on British television. And on my very first job, he was anchoring the show, and I was live from Crystal Palace. And I was sat in front of the commentary box monitors, which I didn't know what they were, but that was quickly explained to me. And then the landline rang up by the box, and I picked up the phone. I went, hello. He goes, Phil, Dickie Davis here. I said, Dickie, talking to me, can't believe it. You know, I was starstruck. And we were 5 minutes away from the race going off. And Dickie said, now, just remember, I'll give you a big build-up as soon as we come back from the break, he said. And he says, remember, just enjoy yourself and remember why you got the job. And I said, Dickie, that's the whole point. I don't know why I got the job. And he just said, because they liked you. Now, don't change when you start speaking on television. Don't go posh. Be yourself. And that's the only advice I gave Paul Sherwin. After Paul accepted my offer on the Promenade des Anglais back in 86, 85, 86, when he finally came onto TV in 86, I said, Paul, you got the job because you got the character, you got the personality. Don't lose it on television. Be yourself. And the people will like it. And of course, we all know the rest.
Yeah, and Dan, for what it's worth, that was one piece of advice that Phil gave me when I first went to the tour. Obviously, when you're doing the commentary on your own and you're doing the boring part of the stage and you're the lead-in to Phil and Paul, your own personal self-doubt is saying, nobody wants to listen to you. People want to listen to Phil and Paul, and I was right. But what Phil said, and exactly what he said to Paul, was just be yourself. And when you're in the shadow of Phil and Paul, you have to be yourself, because if you try and be an impersonation of somebody else, you're going to fall flat on your face. There's no point in trying to be a successful musician as a cover band. If you want to be a successful musician, you have to be an original. And it's the same in commentary. You have to be yourself. There's no good being an impersonation of somebody else, because you're always going to be second best if you're impersonating someone.
Yeah.
And Gerry, that same philosophy must apply to business as well, yeah?
In sport or business, same philosophy. Yeah, be yourself, be natural, and look after people.
Well, Iffy, you've always been yourself, mate.
Yeah, well,
definitely original.
The only time that Gerry's sort of gone away from that theme is he said to me, "You got to stop being yourself." But anyway, that's another story.
Was that the time you told him we were staying in the Chateau Carnival, the Chateau Kia Carnival?
That's only one.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Hey, you can stuff up once, but you can't stuff up 2 days in a row. I learned that. So very true.
Phil, I'd like to ask you a question about actually watching the doco. And when you sit down to watch it for the first time and it is about you and you've handed over a lot of control to somebody else to portray your life, was it nervous when you hit the play button to watch it for the first time?
Trish was freaking out. She hates seeing herself in pictures and on television. She's so old and ugly. But I said to her, I said, we've got to watch it. Actually, we've had the link quite a while. I know I sent it to you and I sent it to John and a few guys, because I was allowed to under the deal. And but we never watched it until about, your time. We watched it this morning, your time, for the first time. And,
really?
Yeah. And we're going to have to watch it. The first deal was I'm going to open a bottle of champagne and just watch it. The champagne didn't happen. I cancelled it. I said, let's just have a drink and do it tomorrow. Well, we did it tomorrow, which was last night at our time. And I was in tears. I was in tears for a lot of reasons. I'm at the wrong end of my life, which means, yes, you've achieved a lot, but I don't really want life to end either. Not that I'm feeling it's going to, by the way, John. So I'm but you never know. I mean, my great hero is Sir David Attenborough, and he's still batting strongly at 94 years of age. So I may have another 20 years, who knows? But it was the Sherwin influence, and I didn't have anything to do with how the film was compiled. Nick and Eleanor, the producers and the camera people, came to me in a letter, said, we'd like to make a documentary of your life. We feel there's something in it. That was at the Christmas of 2016, and then 17, and then through the year from the rest of 17 to 18 and into all of 19, they were filming. And during that period, of course, Paul died. So they started changing the routine. Then they'd seen a side they didn't know of me, my deep involvement with the wildlife in Africa and in Australia. And so as the money was being funded from Australia, they wanted a lot of Australia in the show. And it was just a brilliant film. And I just kept looking at it, I think, God. And I kept on, people were so nice to me. I couldn't understand why. I mean, I used to go to bed looking in the mirror saying, well, what the hell are they cheering at? I just don't see it. But anyway, I didn't want to burst the bubble and find out either, because then I might have changed. So I didn't.
I watched it before you, because you sent it to us, and I think it was at around about 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So I got the kids off to school that next morning. As soon as they were out the door, I was watching it, and I absolutely loved it. And the part that I did love the most was the way Paul was weaved into it and your relationship. And I consider that to be the greatest privilege that I've had in my commentary career, is not just the commentating on the Tour de France. In fact, much more than commentating on the Tour de France is to see you two together. And the one line that I had in the film was that the Phil and Paul that we see on screen, the Phil and Paul that is off screen, is even more entertaining. And it was such a privilege for me to see you two carry on like a couple of school kids in the commentary box, in and out of the commentary box. Paul is the world's busiest photographer, taking photos of people with you as you walk out of the commentary box. And I say, can we get a photo with you, Phil? Paul, can you take the photo? And the thing about Paul, he made a career for himself as a domestic, as somebody that helped others.
Yeah.
And that's what he was as a human being. Correct. That's what it came through in the way he worked with you, and he always took those photos. And that's the way he treated me. And when he knew that perhaps I was, had a difficult day, or I'd made a few mistakes on air or something, or he knew that I liked peanut M&Ms. So he'd walk past my commentary position. You guys always have to walk past me as I'm in the door. He'd put his hand on my shoulder and drop a handful of peanut M&Ms on the table, and then just give me an elbow as he walked past. He didn't have to say anything.
No.
That meant everything to me. He was unbelievable. I love the way they've portrayed him in the film, because they've got it right.
Yeah, Matt, I've got a question of you. You waited until your kids were off to school. Is it an adults-only movie, or?
Well, that's because I know Phil and Paul, Gerry, so I was concerned about language.
Okay.
But it's safe.
There was only one bad word in it, I think, and I was speaking at a dinner. It was fitting, and it was
it was appropriate. It was a correct use of language.
Yeah. That was absolutely true too. It wasn't ad-lib.
No.
I remember. I knew Paul from racing days, and he was just a first-year pro, I think, and we were living not that far from each other in Belgium, and we went. He took me to the races a couple of times, and I remember after the second one, he said, "I'm not taking you anymore." He said, "I can't. I'd like to come straight home after the race rather than get stuck in the pub." So that was the end of my lift.
That sounds like Paul.
Phil, when did you know that you had really good chemistry with Paul? Was it very, very early on in that relationship?
Oh yeah. Funnily enough, I was invited as guest of honor of his amateur club cycling annual dinner, which was Rotolac Plastics Altrincham Road Club of the Manchester area, and I lived in the south end. And they invited me to be guest of honor and to say and wish Paul Sherwin all the best, because he was now going to France over the winter to join the Loin-Billancourt Club, which is the big one in Paris, which is where Phil Anderson went, Alan Piper went. They all became friends together. And so I did, and I said, when we next see Paul back in Great Britain, he'll have been a star. And because he'd won all the major races in Britain, he was very good. And so he went. And of course, he only had schoolboy French, but he could only speak French in Paris, and all his cycling team were French. He spoke French better than a Frenchman, but after 10 years immersed in it in Lille, and his best friend and best man at his wedding was the former World Pursuit champion, Alain Bondou, who was devastated when Paul passed away. Alan and I are still in contact. So then we built over the next 10 years as a pro. It was a reporter-rider relationship. I was on every tour he rode. And in those days, the tour wasn't like it is nowadays. There was an old food wagon parked on the start line for the riders. There was no tour village. And Paul, only the riders were allowed to approach it. No officials, and no press certainly. So Paul used to get me half a melon every morning, half a grapefruit, sorry, every morning, because he knows I like grapefruit for breakfast. And he used to bring it over and he'd go, here's your grapefruit. I said, oh, thanks, Paul, that's great. How are you going to write it? Oh, I don't bloody know. It depends what they want to do, he says. I suppose I'll be on the front all day. And that's how he was. His whole life was like that. Then he became a hero when he had that bad crash in the opening kilometre of a stage up to Pontarlier. And he told his teammates to leave him because they were all going to be eliminated because he was going to be out the tour. And he arrived very late. And I was driving away from the finish line to write my story down the hill in the press room. I saw Paul still going up. I thought, oh, God, he's got no chance now. Anyway, in the press room, the chief commissaire was a friend of mine because I was also at the time quite busy in commissarying international events. And Vim came up to me and he said, Phil, your English friend, Paul Sherwin. I said, yeah. He said, he's not out of the tour. I said, what do you mean he's not out of the tour? He said he showed such courage to ride that whole race on his own. He's in big pain and he finished. So we put him back in the race. He said, the organisers didn't want it, but we wanted it and we're the bosses. So we put him back in. So I went round to all the English journalists and we subbed together. And so we had to sub together, Gerry, to buy one bottle of champagne. We couldn't afford it. We only 4 journalists. And so the next morning, I went onto the start line of the tour with the bottle. And I said, Paul, this is for you. And he goes, well, you look at, what are you doing that for? I said, well, what you did yesterday. Oh, it was nothing, he said. It's a long day, long bloody day. I said, well, what are you talking about? Anyway, of course he took it. And I gave it to his teammates later. But that's Paul for you. And then we built a rapport. And I remember he finished first in the time trial at Villard de Lans, where the tour went this year, actually. Same finish line. I used it in the commentary. And he was the first rider off and the first rider to finish. And I announced the fact that for the moment, at least, Paul Sherwin leads the Tour de France because we won't get any closer than this. And I said it on TV at the time. And I got him up onto the podium and he took a bit of commentary towards the end, of course. He finished well down in that particular tour. He finished last overall, which was 144th, which is how many riders are left in the Giro d'Italia this morning. So there's always coincidences.
You're a man of numbers, Phil. You're a man of numbers.
Yeah, I am. And by the way, the film, when it's released in Adelaide on the 22nd of October, I didn't know it, but Catherine Sherwin just told me it's their wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
What an unbelievable coincidence.
That's unbelievable.
It's bound to be a huge success anyway, but that just adds extra weight to it.
It did, and we built 12 years of great friendship on the tour. And then I read in an English paper that Paul was retiring. He never told me. And I ran out the press room on a Sunday in Nice. And when the bunch finished in Nice in the bunch sprint, then they have the time trial of the Col d'Ez, and we go home. I never go up the Col d'Ez. It can't get down with the traffic, so I get the train and get back to London with the car. And so I ran out at the lunchtime as he crossed the line. I said, hey, are you packing in? He goes, well, yes, sort of. I'm leaving Europe. I'm going back to England. 2 years in England. I said, okay. I said, well, do you fancy working on television with me? And he looked at me. He said, yeah, I'll give it a go. I said, okay. I said, I can't promise anything because there's no money yet, but it could happen. It took another year or more, but it did happen. And I remember that Paul was a great friend, and we built our character together with the same sense of humour. We did everything automatically. We never pre-arranged anything. We walked into dinners where there was 800 people at one stage at the theatre in Seattle. As we were walking, they were clapping, and we were walking down the ramp to the start, and Paul said in my ear, what are we going to talk about? And I said, we'll think of something when we get out here. And that was 50 feet from the stage, and we hadn't made any plan. And honestly, we got a standing ovation at the end because we were just ourselves telling stories.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we've got another special guest, and he was your co-commentator for the last 2 Olympic Games. It's Scotty McGrory. Oh. Scotty, must be a real honour to work with the great man Phil Liggett over the last 2 editions of the Olympics.
Absolutely, and we were hoping to do it again today, this year for Tokyo, but we'll have to wait till next year now. Hello to everybody there, Matt, Gerry, good to see you, mate, and of course Iffy and Dan, Phil. You're on the other side of the planet, but it's always an absolute pleasure to communicate with you, mate. Now, I had the privilege of, when I won my Olympic gold medal at the Sydney Olympic Games, the commentator was Phil Liggett, of course. So whenever I do corporate events, etc., and do the last couple of laps of my race with Brett Aiken, it's the voice of Phil Liggett that gets to call it. And, Phil is, without doubt, the greatest English-speaking commentator of cycling of all time. I know people also put him up as the greatest English commentator of all time on any sport. So that was a real privilege. 12 years later, I get to work with him at the London Olympic Games. But before we got to the Games, I had a meeting with the head of sport for Channel 9, and he asked me if I'd watched the Winter Olympics beforehand and listened to Phil Liggett's commentary. And I wasn't sure where he was going with that. I thought, oh, yeah, I think I did. He said, well, did you notice who commentated with him? And we had a conversation about that. And he said, yeah, well, that person talked over Phil a little bit. I said, oh, really, did he? He said, you will not talk over Phil Liggett. I'm like, and I knew right there and then that there was the main man is Phil Liggett. You just add. You are the add to Phil Liggett. And then when I got a couple of days into our commentary in London in 2012, I went in to talk to the producer of sport to say, yeah, is everything okay? Have I stepped over Phil's boundaries yet or not? He said, no, it's all good. You're doing a very, very good job. And the first thing that you realise, and I think Matt could probably contest to this as well, is that when you sit beside Phil, you quickly realise Phil doesn't need anybody. Phil can do it all on his own. So when you do speak, you make sure that it's worth it because you're taking Phil's space. Not that he wants that space, but he could do it all on his own. So you are an add to Phil Liggett. He's such a great commentator, that's for sure.
You need two voices, but thank you for that, Scotty.
You need a pause. Sometimes you have to go to the toilet as well. So you need someone else there just so you can do that.
Listen, they moved the toilets on the Tour de France to me at the comedy box because I didn't have time to get to where they were always situated. That's true.
You did it to me at London once. You looked at me and said, you okay? I've just got to go to the toilet. And it's the Olympic Games, the biggest event I'd ever commentated. And I thought, no, I'm not okay if you leave the commentary now. Please don't go. Go in your pants. I don't care. And you left for a couple of minutes and I didn't know what to do.
Well, you all the same.
One thing I want to talk about, given that we have three well-renowned commentators on the panel now, a big thing that was talked about, Phil, in the documentary was the whole
I used to do commentary too.
John, sit in your corner and just be quiet for a minute, all right? Now, one of the things was the whole Lance thing, Phil. And from my perspective, I thought you were pretty harshly treated by the public in that situation because you're a very trusting person and your job as a commentator, you commentate on the vision. Now, when they started saying, oh, well, role of a journo, I don't think that that's the expectation because if you're in a room and someone tells you a direct thing, no, Phil, like I didn't cheat, I didn't do drugs or whatever, you're a trusting guy. You're going to take word for it. Like if John said to me, John, there's an alleged serious crime. And if he goes, nah, I didn't do it, I'd take his word for it. And then I'd go into bat for the guy because that's what you do. You're loyal. So I felt that you were unfairly treated throughout that whole period because this expectation of you have to be a journo, you have to write. So it's a very different role as the commentator.
Look, first of all, I wasn't too badly treated by the social media. Only anybody that comes up usually has a complaint. So there were some of those, yes. But there were an awful lot defending me as well. And I watched the battle between the good and the bad chasing each other on my social media because I never made any comment because you're just stirring a hornet's nest. As a trained journalist, I understand that the journalists want the story. And it's never going to be a good story because that doesn't sell newspapers, unfortunately. And so they were looking for the other side. David Walsh, we were friends. We're just respectful of each other now, I would say, is the answer. I've spoken to Gerry quite a few times. He was on a mission, and so were the world bodies, and not the world bodies, sorry, so was all the drug control agencies, because they were very suspicious of the performances. Having said that, Lance was a very special bike rider, and even without drugs, and he'd read very early on in his life that the Tour de France was riddled in drugs, and if he told his team, guys, we either take drugs and you join me in this and we try to win the Tour. Otherwise, you get off the team and we don't ride the Tour de France. That was the bottom line. He told the team that. Now, as we know, because he sued everybody, and I was on his private jet flying from one gig to another with him, I was sat 4 seats back. There was only 4 seats in the aircraft, big aircraft too. And he was on the front with his internet at 50,000 feet, because he flies higher than the commercial liners. And he was sat up there, and I'd hear him say, Jesus Christ, listen to this guy. What crap's he talking about? And he'd just pass it to his agent, who was always sat by him. Sue him. He said, I ain't bothered with this. I'm not even content. Just sue him. And of course, he won every case because they could not prove a single word they were alluding to. And in the end, they forced it to put him in an untenable situation, because his son was being bullied and punched at school, because he's always been told by the kids in American school that his dad was a drug cheat. He says, no, he's not. The fight started. And his wife, then his mum rather, she was being paid $50,000 just to give a talk about how her son beat cancer to win 7 tours. That fell through the tube, so he went to her. Then he went to the office of Livestrong and left them all in tears when he said it's all true. And then he went to Oprah, and I was in the Adelaide Hilton Hotel in a private room that management gave me to stay away from the press while I watched the whole confession. It was my worst dream realized, for sure. But I'm very old-fashioned in that way, and I like to think I'm very English in that way too. A guy is innocent till proven guilty, and there was never any proof. And as Paul used to say, we can't go on television and commentate on this guy riding on drugs when we don't know. And we weren't investigative journalists. I wasn't going to put the headphones down and then wander off into space and try and chase down the rights and wrongs of Lance Armstrong. And the agencies, of course, they were prepared to sacrifice everybody en route to getting Lance Armstrong, which is what they did. They slapped over the knuckles all the riders on the team, maximum 6 months suspension. They were all retired anyway. They only wanted Lance, and they nailed him. And they worked very hard to get him because they all wanted the money back. And they got it all back. I've never spoken to Lance apart from 2 minutes on television on the direct interview, which was live, so there's no social banter, since 2011. It's a long time ago. It's 9 years ago since I've actually spoken to Lance Armstrong. And yet, everybody hated him. What happened to the viewing figures when he stopped riding the tour? They plunged. We expected it with American television, but not French. French television lost 50% of the viewers, and they hated Lance Armstrong. The journalists did. Not the people, the journalists did. And you got the odd ones running up and down the mountains with syringes and stuff. But you'll always get the extremists. But the actual people admired Lance. He raised $600 million. There's two sides to Lance. I've introduced it to cancer patients in their final days. Lance didn't want to speak to him. And I nailed him on stage, and I called them out the audience because they'd come to me at the start of the evening before Lance even got there. And they said, all we want to do is say hi to Lance. It'd be very difficult, I said, because he usually comes on stage and runs as soon as I say goodbye. And he did. He had a car outside every time. He came on stage, and he looked at me, and his eyes turned steel. And I said, now, just before you go, Lance, and he thought, what are you doing to me now? I could see in his eyes. I said, I've got 2 people I want you to meet. And they're on stage 4 cancer. And they wanted to show you some memorabilia, and maybe you'd sign it. And he just goes, okay. Then they walked up to the stage. And then Lance reached for the microphone, turned the switch off, and said, this is between you and me. You guys are out of it. And he sat there and he talked to those people for 10 minutes. Now that's the other side of Lance. He's a professional, and he saw what was going on. I did it the same way. And I don't know how he could do it. Personally, he had 4 presidents of the USA's personal telephone numbers in his cell phone. He showed me Barack Obama's number. Now, this guy was very, very special. How did he come out and face those people after the scandal was found? I was not naive, put it that way, as I was accused by David Welsh and others. I was not naive. I don't particularly like David's input in the film, but I would not affect the content because it happened, and the filmmakers wanted it in, and I didn't object at all. I'm glad it's in. We couldn't let the film go by without talking about Lance. I've no feeling for Lance one way or the other, but I know he was a great athlete. He was a great cheat, and he was a big icon that brought tens of thousands of people into our sport. And those people did not walk away when Lance had to. So we still have those supporters. What can we do?
Dan,
I gotta say
Lance Armstrong
that,
aside. Sorry, so I was going to say, Lance aside, Phil, it's a difficult topic when you're in commentary because you can't hang somebody out to dry when you don't have the evidence, when they haven't been convicted. And there's also the balancing act of your role is to call the shots and deliver the entertainment. And I find one of the challenging writers at the moment is a guy like Alejandro Valverde, who has been suspended, he's done his time and he's back racing. And some people have this expectation that every time you mention his name, you should mention his doping past.
Yeah.
But it would completely spoil the broadcast if you have Alejandro Valverde, he's done a doping suspension, but he wins the world championships. It doesn't work. You've got to get the balance right.
He might be super low for inferring he was taking drugs. You never know. Yeah. I must confess, I'm glad you mentioned Valverde, though, Matt, because didn't he have a wonderful Tour de France? He was slightly anonymous, but that guy never missed a beat.
And 40 years of age and just keeps on going.
I kept bringing him forward in the commentary because he wasn't a guy I particularly liked. I never really knew, but boy, I admire him immensely.
He's very popular in Spain, that's for sure. Phil, we talk about Lance, and at the time while you were commentating, obviously through that era, then there was this incredible, I guess, hypersensitivity and how the tour became so much bigger under Lance. But through all of your years, the Tour de France, the Olympic Games, Commonwealth Games as well, and a lot of Australian fans don't realise that you commentated for Australian television for Commonwealth Games and Olympics and not for the UK. They perhaps didn't quite understand that or realise that through all of those editions. But what are some of those moments that really stand out for you? It's a question without notice, but are there any sort of individual performances that are quite special to you through all those tours and the Olympics and Comp Games, etc., or maybe it's a bakery, I don't know.
Well, every race I call has its place in my statistical file, and I enjoy them. I remember in 1992 when Kathy Watt won the gold medal right out the blue, and I know that Gerry had a little bit of help there to see Kathy got to Barcelona. But I was it was the last day of the Tour de France. I was still in Paris. And I'd just come out of commentating on the finish of the tour, running next morning to get the plane to join the Olympics. And I was watching Kathy Watt waving the flowers on TV, and I was doing Barcelona for Channel, I think it was Channel 7 at the time. And Australian television has always been very kind to me. Phil Bates is the man that brought me to Australia in the first instance in 1988 to do the Commonwealth Bank Cycle Classic. I did that for 18 years. John came up with his ideas about the summer of cycling, and so I'm now working with John down in Victoria as well. And then, of course, Mike Trevor and noises here, I can't turn them off. Mike Turter then came up with his idea of the Tour Down Under. And on the way, Australian TV always wanted to beat BBC to getting me signed up for the Olympics, which wasn't difficult because the BBC never asked you to work for them until there was nobody else left to choose from, and about 6 months ago when the price would be cheaper. However, they used to come to London 18 months before the Olympics and ask me to meet with them at the head of the network. And they said, we've just been to BBC. We want you to work for us. But they've told us you can't work for us because you're working for them. I said, I never speak to the BBC. The last Olympics I did for the BBC was 1984 in Los Angeles. And they've never spoken to me since. So I can work for you. And that was how I started it. And then they always offer me packages. And so I fell in love with Australia. I mean, I saw the country fairly late on in life, really, in 1988. I was already 45 years of age, something like that. And I wouldn't change it for the world, because I always feel working in Australia and on Australian television, you can be yourself. You don't have to think of the ethics and protocol of working for a government network like BBC. I remember the biggest argument when I went to a Winter Olympics in Lillehammer for Channel 9. When I got there, the biggest row was all the journalists had found where Tui's had stored all the beer for the whole Olympics for the press, and they drank the lot before the game started. So that was the argument, not how we're going to put on these Olympics, but it was who drank all the beer, and Trevorrow wasn't there, so it was amazing. We had a great time, and I made friends with so many people. And Hugh McIlvany, is an old long Bruce McIlvany. There's a long, good standing friend of mine, and Bruce it's a great story because I'd finished my ski jumping up in Courchevel. I'd come down to Albertville, and I, because of Trish and her speed skating Olympics, I knew a bit about speed skating, and they asked me to go and watch the event. So I did. I went and watched the event for a while, and then we went along, invited by the Norwegian ski commentator, speed skating commentator, with Bruce. And as we were walking there, Sam Smith from Queensland, the swimmer, who was going out with this guy, I can't remember his name right now. We were walking down the street to a private club where all the gold medals of the Norwegian Winter Olympians were in this one room having a great time with beer and everything, celebrating. And the Prince of Denmark, Prince of Norway was there. And McAvaney and I walked up the stairs, and I said, the bodyguard parted, and Sam said to me, the prince is here, by the way. He's a good friend of Olaf. And so he's a good friend of Olaf. I said, okay. And then Bruce goes in, and the guy says, Bruce, I want to meet the Prince of Denmark. The Prince of Norway is a friend of mine. And he goes, good day, mate. He says, I'm the King of Australia. I said, oh, God. And the Prince was up, he said, but I really am the Prince of Norway. And Bruce goes, oh. Within half an hour, those two guys were sat together the whole evening, exchanging jokes and stories. They got on so well. But what a way to meet him. But they also told me straight to do things that we want to do to them. Yeah,
hey, I've got to let Matty Keenan go. He's on dad duties at the moment. But Keenan, thanks for joining the show, mate. You're a legend.
Thanks. Phil, congratulations on the film. It's absolutely sensational. Anybody watching, I highly recommend going to see the film.
Well, I believe the tickets are available for 22nd in Adelaide, but of course you guys can't get there, but those that can should go.
It's wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Stuff, Matty.
See you, buddy.
Hey, one other thing, Phil, that was in the film, and I was rapt to see it, is Trish. Some of the scenes with her were fantastic. I pissed myself laughing that scene when you dropped her off to dancing and you were sitting in the car park the whole time reading a book, and you're like, oh, thank God she got an award. It was all worth it.
It comes out with a cup. Yeah. Do you know, I met Trish before I met Phil. So when we went over as amateurs in '73, organised by an expat Aussie, Ron Webb, Pat was, as I used to call it, Trish, was Ron's PA. Yeah. And I got there a few days after the other boys. I remember, long flight, wet hair, smoked a cigarette, and she got stuck into me and said, you reckon you're a bike rider? But, so that was my first time. Back in 1973, I met Pat.
Yeah, she was PA and very confidential too. She never, ever told me even what the riders got paid in the Skull 6 days. She was totally Ron's girl. That's why Ron liked her. Very confident.
Phil, do you still enjoy commentating? Do you still enjoy it?
I wasn't looking forward to the tour this year. I was convinced it was never going to happen, so I wasn't really taking much. I was doing the garden most of the days. I wasn't bothered. And then it became clear it was going to happen, so I booked a car for 3 weeks and got a driver and stuff. And there I was. I thought, well, this is going to be terrible down in the studios in Sky Television, remotely broadcasting the tour. I couldn't raise any enthusiasm. I spoke to all the teams in the 10 days building up to the tour. All the teams were thinking about, well, if we get to the start, that was their attitude. But we started, and I was very emotional. My first words, you could hear my voice was breaking when I was saying, well, I really didn't think we were going to be at this stage, but here we are. The Tour de France is underway. And then I got into it. And every day, they've got good viewing figures. After 3 days, they've told us our viewing figures were up by 30%, 20%, 50%. And as you know, we got our biggest figures in the end for the last 10 years. So it was terrific. And I really loved the tour in the end. I got the Sky TV people really looked after me because they were very strictly COVID there. We couldn't go wandering around the studios. We were into our studio. I had a runner that brought the food to the table for me. I couldn't eat much when I was speaking anyway. But the coffee was good, and it became a day work job. And I was 3,500 miles away from Bob Rowe, my co-commentator. After 48 hours, the big bosses of NBC called me. I was being driven home in the car. And the guy said, look, I want to tell you, this race is awesome. We would never know you weren't alongside us here. This is unbelievable. And we're really going to get a big boost. And the figures justified it later. So then I got into the Tour, and it was a great race. It was a good race. But even when the race started, every time we interviewed the rider, well, it's if we reach Paris. So I was always planning on the last week back in the garden, but it never happened. We got to Paris, and we did everything right, and it was a good race. So.
Yeah. Scotty?
Phil, you kind of touched on it there, but for a lot of people that were listening or watching may not have quite understood. Can you just explain a little bit about how that commentary worked? Because normally, you are at the Tour de France, and NBC have a staff of something like 70 people that go to France. Very different this year.
Yeah.
But you were locked down in the UK, and the commentary team from the US didn't go to France at all. Can you just explain to everybody how that went and how challenging it was?
It was huge. I'm non-technical, so I never get involved. I'm just told I had to go in a day before the race to check do all the technical checks, and they seemed to work very well. So I was only there 2 hours. I voiced a few commercials, a few adverts, and a few features, and then I went home. So it was only a 2-hour day. And then the next day was for real. And when I came in the next day, there's 2 little spy cameras mounted. One was showing me Bob Rowe in his commentary box in Manhattan, just outside Manhattan. And the other one showed me, and so we could talk with sign language, and he would then pick up the commentary without tripping over. Then we would have the stats on one screen as well, showing exactly the standings in the race, where the riders were on the course, and then we had the live pictures, so I could see. And I was playing on the benefit of 47 years on the Tour de France. I knew exactly where we were and what was around the corner and where the coffee shop was. So I could ad-lib all that in. It was much harder to describe the castles because the book was very disorientated this year. The woman's retired, for goodness sake. They tried to do the job. They didn't tell the helicopter. The helicopter was showing us the wrong castles at times and wandering up into ones we couldn't find in the book. But anyway, that was the only thing that was technically not quite right. Everything else was fantastic. Then and I didn't suggest him, but we found a real find in Adam Blythe, who just left Lotto Soudal, a Brit. Our American reporters weren't allowed into France, couldn't get out of the States, so we had to replace Adam from Great Britain into France. He was superb. He's a northern lad. He's been at the top of his career, never rode the Tour.
He rode with Green Edge for a year.
He did indeed.
Great guy.
All of his friends were in the Tour. And they were bombing his motorbike when they were going past, banging him, saying, "Hey, how are you going, Adam?" And he was a big hit. In fact, I text the network when off air and said, "You got to keep Adam. You got to use him elsewhere because he was great." And he was another example. After the show was over, he sent me a lovely little email and said how nice it was to have worked with me. He said, "I was his mentor when he was 12 years old, when he was starting to watch the Tour de France on telly. He never thought he'd ride a motorbike and report back to me on the real live Tour de France." He was a lovely man. He's a natural too. He would be a Paul Sherwin, and he'd be the guy I'd choose if I had to do it all over again.
Just one thing I know we're getting near the end, but one thing I really loved in the movie was that part of the Tour de France when you lost all vision and you commentated the last part of that stage with a guy in London calling you on the phone and telling you what was happening. That was just amazing.
That guy was Brian Venner, and he'd come off being head of BBC Grandstand, the company that never bothered to take me to the Olympic Games too much. And he was now given that he formed his own production house for television Sport and Leisure was the name of the company then. It's now V² Television, I think. And Brian, I didn't know, but I'd made friends with the new commissioning editor for sport. I was an Olympic silver medalist in athletics, Adrian Metcalf. Met him at the 1980 Olympics. And he said to me, he said, "I love your sport." He said, "It doesn't get enough on television." And within the 6 months, he'd been appointed the commissioning editor for a brand new channel called Channel 4. And he called me. He said, "Phil, I'm going to send you all these letters and I'm going to pay you £200 a year. You sift through them and you tell me which ones I should look at for television, because I don't want to read all these bloody wacky letters from cyclists saying we should have this on television. And that's what he did. Well, of course, the big thing came in 1970, 81, 82. He got the television. He was friends with the guys from ITV, so I was doing weekend television for ITV. And then in the week, live TV coverage of the Tour de France. Every day live, never been heard of. The first year, it was an experiment. It was just me. The director was in London, and that was it. There was nobody alongside me. I had no co-commentator, just me. And the guy in London would say, right, well, he said, we're on in 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. He said, the first pictures will be a shot of the Tour de France, and then we're going to show the overall standings. Because I had none of these pictures coming to me. They're out in London. And so that's how it started. He would say, right, you're on. I'd go, hi, everybody, welcome to the live coverage of the first stage of the Tour de France. As you can see, it's a beautiful day. I can see a bloody thing. And then, they were showing the overall classification. And as you can see, this is the situation as the race goes off today. And he says that. Then he says, right, just call the pictures. And just call the pictures. That's how we got into live TV. Now, the next year, because we got the maximum viewers they could count, literally, on the brand new network, I think it was around 200,000 a day. They were very impressed. So they put it out to tender. Brian got the job, Brian Venner, for his company. And I didn't know this, so it's all backroom work. Then one day the phone rang. It was probably in March time, building up to the tour in July. And Brian goes, are you Phil Liggett? I said, yeah. He said, well, my name is Brian Venner. I don't know who you are, and I've never heard of you, but I'm told I've got to employ you. That's how we met. We became the closest of friends. The closest. We did everything together. The guy fought for his commentators. He fought for his motorbikes on the tour, tried to kick him off for being in the wrong place. He was brilliant. And I did lots of other events for him after that. But that's how we met. Now, during that race into Blagnac, we had a rainstorm to die for. It was unbelievable. When we had no posh commentary boxes in those days, we just had a tarpaulin cover over a scaffold. And as it filled with water, it collapsed and tipped all the water right across the stage. Everybody was soaked to the skin, including me and Gerry. And the television blew up. Literally, everything blew up with the water. NOS, RTB, you name them, Rai Television, all just sat back. They're no telly. They're off there. Let them work it out in the studios back in their countries. But of course, Brian, everybody in the world had perfect pictures. It's just our monitors weren't working. So he rang me up on the famous landline, and I picked it up and I said, hello, Brian. He says, we can see absolutely perfectly, so you better keep commentating. I said, well, I can't see anything. Well, I'll tell you what's happening from the pictures I've got here. And then he was saying, these guys are in blue and they're on the front all together. So that's the Panasonic team trying to lead out Phil Anderson. So he called it like that. And in fact, that's what we did. I was able to lean over the wet and the muck for the last 500 meters, and I called it from coming towards me. We got the winner right. And then Brian called back. He says, I've been in television an awful long time, and I've never in all of my life heard anybody do that, he said. You were bloody brilliant. He always spoke like that. And I saw him last night when I looked at the film. He's in the film saying almost what I've said. And I sent him the film now. I said, Brian, you were wonderful, and thank you so much. And read this film quickly before it expires.
Commentary would have been easy after that, Phil.
Oh, God.
Looking at pictures.
He said, I worked with all the finest commentators in the world. David Coleman, he says, they could never have done that. And he was over the moon. And so, because nobody around the world could have understood what was going on. It was only us that looked at it.
Yeah.
I've shown Clive, and I said, get down there and interview Alan Piper, who was just across the line. The water, I'm not kidding, the water was 8 centimeters deep. It was.
Yeah, you can see it in the film. It's up to the top of the cars.
And of course, Alan being an Aussie, Paul said, Alan, well, how was that? Because I'm not going to forget, it's a personal friend of Paul. Alan just said, mate, he said, we were up to our axles in shit. We went live on television.
Mate, we could talk for hours and hours about the amazing career, but I just want to say that the lasting thing that was popping off the screen for me was just how proud I am to say that I've crossed paths with you, mate, because it's such an amazing story and you're such a humble guy, but I question anyone to find someone that's had such an effect on the sport than the voice of cycling himself. You just an absolute legend. And the fact that you're so humble, I think, is something, particularly us Aussies. Yeah, we love tall poppies, but we can't chop a humble poppy down because, even to this day, you can see that you're uncomfortable at how popular you are. It's unbelievable.
I'm just happy to have so many nice friends, in all honesty, and I count my fans as my friends too. And look, I'm no different to anybody else. I'm just doing a job. But I'm living the job. It's my life, and I've met some great people. Gerry's one of them. And Gerry knows he can twist my arm. He can get anything he likes out of me.
and Gerry, it's a special friendship, mate.
It is.
It is. And, as you said, Phil is a quality person, loved by all. And we look forward to having you back here early in 21.
I hope so, Gerry. I really do. I just hope so. Gosh, I don't know.
Stay safe and healthy.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Yeah.
I'd just like to say, Phil, we've been mates for something like 40 years, and it's been a really special friendship. I don't think I've ever been anywhere with you, no matter what part of the world, where someone doesn't come up and say, "Oh, excuse me, are you Phil Liggett?" I say, "Not me, you mean him." Yeah. But I mean, it happens all the time, and you handle it so well. But you've been a wonderful friend, and we talk about mentors. You, not that I've ever wanted to be a commentator, but the way you've handled yourself through life's been absolutely something special to watch and be a part of. So great to have you on board. I look forward to catching up in this summer, in the summer of cycling.
Indeed. Thank you, John, very much. Thanks for your mail this morning, Scotty. That was really kind of you.
Can I just disagree with you, Phil? You're not just like anyone else. You are unique, and that is why you get so much love from all the fans and the people that have worked with you, and the close friends like Gerry and John that have been, friends of yours, and Phil Bates for such a long time. So you are a special person, and I'm privileged to have you commentate on me, and I'm certainly understand the privilege that it's been to commentate with you. So, well done on an incredible career.
No, thank you so much.
Well, as we said, the film will come out at the premiere at the Adelaide Film Festival, but it will be in the cinemas, I think, early next year.
Around Australia, then it'll go around the world, hopefully. Sell it now. I should say, I never got a cent out of this, just so you know. I never got paid for this.
Mate, think of the corporate cash you're going to make in 2021. Don't worry about that.
I really hope that Private Lady do very well, because I think they did an incredible job. As I say, I've only just watched it, and I was in tears, but I can't believe I've done so much in my life. I've forgotten what was on there. I just can't believe it.
Phil, I think that just your story will inspire lots of other people, and you've been a great ambassador for cycling, and may it long continue.
Thanks.
Yep. Here. Well, we might let you go, Phil and Gerry, and we'll do our predictions for the Giro. It's been fantastic to have you guys on the show. And
good night, boys.
Good to see you, Gerry.
Hi, Gerry.
We'll see you,
Phil. Night, Phil. Thanks, mate. Thanks heaps, mate.
Thank you, guys, and good luck, I hope to see you all soon.
Good on you, mate. Speak to you soon.
Take care.
The voice of cycling, absolute legend. That was fantastic insights. Now we better give our quick tips for the stage, boys. It looks pretty straightforward, pretty flat.
Demar.
Well, yeah. Look at the odds.
Oh, he's sure.
Well, and Gerry is up there as well, but we saw him the last opportunity he's had on a sprint stage that he just didn't really have it. So Sagan, you can't expect him to be, faster than Demar after the incredible ride that he put in stage 11, but we just can't put it past him because that was a superhuman effort. It was raced more like a one-day classic than stage 10 of a Grand Tour. So it was incredible.
Staggering.
It certainly was. And look, it follows the Adriatic coast all the way up, basically just hugs the coastline, northwesterly direction the whole way up. Cross tailwind, not super strong, shouldn't really affect the race too much. And then just before they get up to Rimini, they do a bit of a loop and go over a couple of hills. So a little bit lumpy the last 50 Ks until they get to 20 Ks to go. And then it's pancake flat into the finish. And I think it's got Damar written all over it, guys.
I've got to be honest with you guys. I've lost a bit of interest in the Giro since Mitchelton Scott left and Jumbo Visma. I'm just going to put it out there. It might fire up in a couple of days. I'm still processing it all, and I missed the daily updates with Whitey and finding out what they had for dinner, and I just have to get over it. And
you can still do Whitey updates.
Well, I mentioned him. He's doing a week quarantine or a couple of weeks back in Spain. So maybe we can just ask him some best movies to watch on Netflix, or he's going to be doing something like that.
Get on the Jai Hindley bandwagon, okay? So his teammate Wilco Kelderman is in second place, and Joao Almeida took an extra 4 seconds by finishing third on the stage yesterday, so he got a couple of bonus seconds. So he's actually lengthened his overall lead. It's only 34 seconds now to Wilco Kelderman. So he's Sunweb, second place. Jai Hindley's there to help him now as we get towards the time trials and then the third week if it happens. But Hindley's in seventh place. Jai Hindley from West Australia is up now into seventh place. He's absolutely flying. So we're just going to jump on the Sunweb bandwagon.
Yep, for sure. All chipped in. And
a great jump in last night as well. So he's but I'll tell you what, you just mentioned Joe. How do you say? Is it Joe Almeida?
Yeah.
The race leader. I tell you what, he's looking better every day. He was very impressive last night, and he is still a chance, especially the tour gets, if those biggest mountains get shortened. Just say, for instance, they do get to Milan. There's a big chance that I was talking to someone in northern Italy earlier today, and the heavy snows on the big mountains, he reckons that they won't be going over Stelvio or any of the big ones. So this. Almeida could be a real chance to win this bike race.
Now, the other thing that I have been able to investigate is that while the Tour de France did have a protocol about how many days raced would be then determined if there was a winner overall, etc., they haven't done that at the Giro. So I've got some insight from someone that wanted to remain nameless, but he spoke to the commissaires at the Giro, and they are still trying to work out right now whether there should be a certain number of days before they give an overall winner. At the moment, it looks like if the race stopped tomorrow, Almeida will be crowned. And look, it sounds like common sense that, okay, he's now leading, so he should win overall. But the Grand Tours are 3 weeks long. It's supposed to go over 3 weeks. We haven't quite got to halfway just yet. So they're still trying to work through this protocol at the moment. But it looks like that, if the race was called off tomorrow, he would be the overall winner. And he's got a 34-second lead, and there's still a long way to go before we get to any stages that could upset him in any way. So you might be right, John.
I think the big decision on this bike race is going to come over the next day or two, because a lot of testing's been done. Only today were all of the entourage, the caravan, all of the other people all being tested. I'd be staggered if there aren't some positives.
If it gets in that caravan, it will spread very fast.
Dan, how the caravan mingles, especially on the first rest day of these Grand Tours and the parties.
The caravan parties.
The caravan parties.
We used to mingle with them. Yeah, we mingled very well with them. That's right. But I heard, I heard from a very reliable source, that there'd been some serious positives, number of positives in the police entourage of the Giro. Now, that hasn't been confirmed, but that's what came through to me a couple of hours ago.
Yeah,
and if that's the case, they're going
to have to shut the race down. Let's be honest. Enjoy this podcast, folks, because we've probably got two good ones left in the kit bag, and then we're out in the paddock.
No, we locked in for 3 weeks, mate. You said you were going to pay me for 3 weeks, so we're going to have to keep going.
We'll just do episodes like tonight. It's not about the bike race. We'll just talk about other stuff.
If Dan said he's paying you for 3 weeks, it's out of his pocket, mate.
That's as
good as money, sir. That's an IOU.
Hey, on that, before we do go, Dan, we might have to show it tomorrow, but I did send you a photo of one of our most trusted and respected viewers watching the podcast tonight. Yeah.
Yes.
Are you able to bring it up? It's almost a little bit of a plug.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
If you
because Gerry was on, the owner of Mitchelton Winery, of course. Beautiful wines, as John has described so eloquently over the last 11 days, and the winery itself.
That's it.
There it is. Kirsty Baxter watching the podcast with cases, not just a bottle, but cases.
Cases.
That is a devoted supporter of Mitchelton wine. Fantastic.
There you go.
Good on you, KB.
I've got a couple of cases over here. Do you want me to go and drag them out? Oh, no, I won't do that.
No, just send them to me, please. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, that wrapped a massive episode. As we said, it's a sensational film, The Voice of Cycling. When it comes out, you have to see it. So, yeah, unbelievable story with Philly. And he's just, as we said, he's so humble, absolute legend of the sport. And some of those insights tonight were fantastic. So,
Dan, did you shed a tear?
I didn't cry, but I was, there was emotional bits for sure.
Okay. Well, because of course John hasn't sent it to anybody, so I haven't seen it, but I certainly did cry. Yeah.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Allegedly. No.
Now, tomorrow night. Who have you got lined up tomorrow night? Eddie Merckx? Can we get Lance's
Eddie Merckx and Dave Brassford.
Luke Rowe. I want Luke Rowe. Where is he?
Probably.
We should be able to get Luke Rowe.
Yeah,
Luke Rowe?
Where is Luke? Have you seen Luke today?
What?
Dan?
Have I?
Have you seen Luke today? Yeah. Do you know? Is he awake?
Oh, Luke.
Okay.
Sorry, now I get it.
Hey!
No, he's still in bed. Can't get Luke.
Still in bed. Oh, okay. All right.
I was thinking of Luke Roberts, the DS.
Yeah, good on you. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, all right. It's been a long night. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow, 7:30. And then I think the next night we're going to have to record a bit earlier because the footy finals are on. So stay tuned for that. We'll keep you updated tomorrow night. See you then.